chipping rust. Steady work. Hey, line rise watch. All clear. Steering through, holding course.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the visceral, gritty, and honestly, kind of cinematic reality of life as an able-bodied seaman in the modern merchant navy. This isn't just a job, folks. It's a calling to master the world's oceans. Just imagine the immense scale of what we're talking about here. Picture a massive steel beast battling the open ocean. It's an isolated, incredibly demanding, but absolutely essential daily life. Without these vessels, and the crews manning them, literally 90% of global trade would just grind to a halt. Think of This Explainer as your definitive career guide. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover life on the steel deck, paychecks by ship type, the apprenticeship pathway, certifications and sea time, climbing the hosspipe, and finally, future demand and shore roles. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Life on the Steel Deck. Out here, you're facing the raw, sensory experience of the roaring ocean and the relentless elements. And the immense responsibility on your shoulders, well, it's actually codified in international maritime law. Standing a proper, vigilant lookout is one of the oldest, most fundamental watchkeeping duties of a seaman. Up on the bridge wings or the bow, the survival of a multi-million-dollar vessel relies entirely on your eyes and ears. No pressure, right? The physical variety of the work is just staggering. Your life is dictated by the relentless rhythm of 4 hours on, 8 hours off watchkeeping. And when you aren't steering by gyro compass, you're thrust right into some seriously grueling day work. We're talking about operating pneumatic needle guns, handling high-tension mooring ropes, near-lethal snapback zones, and constantly defending the ship's steel structure from endless corrosive salt spray. And the technical nature of your cargo entirely dictates your daily reality. If you're on a bulk carrier, you might find yourself erecting tower extension ladders to strip bauxite residue from high underdeck frames. Switch to a chemical tanker, and you're navigating extreme toxic hazards, strictly adhering to closed-system Butterworth cleaning protocols. And on a moving container liner, you are manually securing heavy lashing bars and turnbuckles high above the deck. It's a job so physically intensive that unions are actually actively fighting to have it performed exclusively by shoreside dockers.
So time at sea is chopped up way differently than it is here on land. The global standard on most merchant vessels is the 4-on, 8-off watch. Pretty straightforward, right? You stand watch for 4 hours, and then you get 8 hours off. But, actually, here's the catch. That 8 hours off includes your day work, maintenance, safety drills, eating, showering, the whole shebang. So you're never truly getting a full 8 hours of sleep. And honestly, it can be even tougher. Some tankers and ferries run this absolutely brutal 6-on, 6-off system. 6 hours working, 6 hours resting. With that schedule, your body literally never gets to complete a full, natural sleep cycle. Balancing that physical exhaustion while staying sharp for your required watchkeeping duties, that is the ultimate test for any AB.
Contrast between these two operational worlds is just massive. If you're assigned as a navigational watchkeeper, you're up on the bridge with the officer of the watch. It's quiet, hyper-focused work. You might be manually steering the ship through a dense, foggy canal or standing lookout on the bridge wings trying to spot lights or debris. It requires immense mental precision. Now on the flip side, contrast that with the deck day workers. Their world is loud, dirty, and incredibly physical. They're out there on the weather decks fighting an endless war against saltwater corrosion. We're talking using pneumatic needle guns to chip away rust, applying anti-corrosion paint, physically splicing thick mooring wires, and constantly greasing the winches.
Moving on to Section 2, Paychecks by Ship Type. So what's the financial reward for all this immense physical sacrifice and, let's be honest, extended family separation? Well, your paycheck is directly tied to the hazards of your vessel. On the international market with major managers like Maersk, an AB makes between $1,800 and $2,700 a month on a container or bulk carrier. But if you transition to high-risk tankers or the offshore wind sector, salaries surge up to $5,000 a month. And under the U.S. flag, the compensation is on a whole different level. $93,000. That number represents the upper echelon of typical annual earning potential for a U.S. flag able seaman. In fact, on government fleet vessels, like those run by the Military Sea Lift Command, bonuses can push that number well over $98,000 a year. This gritty lifestyle, with its long vacations and tax benefits, is genuinely a financially lucrative career path. It's a serious paycheck for serious work.
Okay, Section 3, the cargo. Containers, chemicals, and LNG.
The reality of your day out there shifts entirely depending on what the ship is carrying. The difference in day-to-day operations is staggering. If you're an AB on a giant container ship, your time in port is defined by intense, exhausting manual labor. You're part of a team locking heavy steel twist locks and lashing bars onto stacked containers, sometimes at dizzying, terrifying heights. It's basically a heavy metal workout. But let's say you secure a role on an LNG carrier, transporting liquefied natural gas. The job completely changes. There's zero heavy metal lashing. Instead, you're meticulously monitoring highly complex cryogenic loading arms and boil-off gas systems, dealing with cargo sitting at a terrifying minus 162 degrees Celsius. To put that into perspective, a single mistake with LNG isn't just a dropped box. It's a catastrophic cryogenic hazard.
And then there are chemical tankers. If you're on one of these, you are stepping into what's widely considered the most technically demanding environment for a deck rating. You aren't just a sailor anymore. You're practically a hazardous materials technician. You have to be intimately familiar with materials safety data sheets. When you're connecting cargo hoses at the manifold, you absolutely must wear specialized chemical-resistant suits, face shields, and sometimes a full breathing apparatus. You have to be flawless when managing inert gas systems to prevent explosions. Because in this environment, a single cross-contamination or toxic leak can be instantly fatal.
Apprenticeship pathway. Now, if you're sitting there wondering how to actually enter this world without a traditional Maritime Academy degree, structured apprenticeships offer a powerful gateway. Organizations like the Marine Society and Sea Cadets provide government-approved paths that plunge you directly into the industry under the really rigorous standards of the Merchant Navy Training Board. This is exactly how you build a career from scratch. This 18-month, step-by-step framework ensures you earn a recognized Level 2 qualification. You're given a dedicated trainer, you track your progress in an electronic training record book, and you face a strict external endpoint assessment.
So why endure all this? The strict discipline, the intense fatigue, the physical danger? Well, unlike a lot of industries where career progression is kind of vague, the maritime world is crystal clear and incredibly rewarding. You can start out with just a basic high school education as an entry-level ordinary seaman. Once you rack up your first 18 months of essential sea time and pass your basic safety assessments, boom, you earn your Able-Bodied Seaman certification. But it doesn't stop there. Through rating to officer bridging programs, an ambitious AB can take all that practical experience, pass the required academic exam milestones, and completely transform their life by earning a deck officer license, eventually even becoming a ship's captain.
To make those leaps along the timeline, you absolutely have to collect and maintain specific international STCW training certificates. Think of this as your literal passport to promotion. You're going to need personal survival techniques, fire prevention, and crucially, your RFP&W, which is just a technical way of saying you're certified to form part of a navigational watch. And hey, if you want to move up to those higher-paying chemical or gas ships we just talked about, you have to earn specialized tanker familiarization certificates too. So you're just constantly upgrading your skills.
But advancing on paper means you have to prove yourself in practice. Your path upward requires absolute mastery over the grueling tasks, the deck repairs, the winch operations, and the strict gangway access controls. And you're doing all of this under the constant, watchful eye of the chief officer and the officer of the watch. By mastering the daily maintenance and the technical watchkeeping simultaneously, you prove to the officers above you that you have the discipline required to one day hold their rank.
Let's look at Section 4, Certifications and CTATing. Operating on international waters means you've got to navigate a strict matrix of global maritime laws. To actually become a certified able seafarer under STCW Regulation 2/5, you really have to earn it. You must meticulously accumulate 12 to 18 months of documented sea time, mastering everything from advanced firefighting to survival craft management. It's a rigorous, deeply structured regulatory pathway.
I really want you to focus on this concept, the snapback zone. It's something every seafarer treats with absolute reverence, and for good reason. When a massive ship is being tied to a dock, those thick mooring ropes are pulled super tight under tens of thousands of pounds of tension. If one of those lines parts or snaps, the recoil is literally faster than the human eye can track, and the sheer force is lethal. Knowing exactly where to stand, and more importantly, where not to stand, is quite literally a matter of life and death when you're managing those winches.
And look, when things do go wrong, the response has to be entirely systematized and swift. In a crisis, say a fire in the engine room or a man overboard, there is zero hesitation, no confusion about who does what. Every AB steps into a highly specific, pre-assigned emergency muster role. You might be designated to immediately don a breathing apparatus and enter a smoke-filled corridor to fight a fire, or you might be assigned to act as the rescue boat coxswain, or control boundary cooling to stop a fire from spreading. It's extremely high stakes, and you train for this constantly.
All right, Section 5, climbing the hawsepipe. For the truly ambitious out there, the able-bodied seaman rating isn't a final destination. It's the foundation for commanding the entire vessel. The term coming up through the hawsepipe is steeped in maritime tradition. It produces officers with a deep, gritty knowledge of shipboard operations because they literally built their careers from the deck up. I mean, they know exactly how heavy a lashing bar is because they used to lift them every single day. 1,080. In the U.S. system, that is the exact number of ocean seagoing days you must document to transition from a rating to qualifying for an unlimited third mate license. That is nearly 3 full years, literally out on the water, mastering your craft, before you can even sit for the complex Coast Guard licensing exams. Talk about dedication. Alternatively, the UK offers this highly structured, higher national certificate route. It demands an intense academic focus on stability, navigation, and marine law. You've got to log 36 months of sea time, complete 6 months of supervised bridge watchkeeping, and finally cross the thresholds into the officer ranks by conquering a grueling face-to-face oral examination with an MCA examiner. It's tough, but absolutely worth it. And finally, Section 6, future demand and shore roles. As you plot your career, you've also got to look ahead to how the industry is evolving. When comparing career exits, an AB needs to understand that while they get to enjoy working outdoors in the sun, their highly specialized navigation and deck skills offer fewer onshore exit options than their colleagues sweating down in the loud, hot engine room. Those mechanical skills translate immediately to shoreside power plants. Looking at the broader industry, economic analysis shows that despite a massive global labor pool of over 1.9 million seafarers, organizational credential frameworks heavily influence hiring. Employers are actively looking for regulatory equivalence, which basically means your specific certifications are your absolute strongest currency. So, what does the future actually hold? Well, it's clear from industry projections up to 2035 that you need to view the AB rating as a fast-paced stepping stone. As smart ships and automation increase, the role won't just disappear, but it's going to rapidly evolve to focus on technical supervision and complex preventative maintenance. You must aggressively pursue advanced endorsements and climb that hawsepipe before automation permanently reshapes the deck department. So do you have the physical grit, the mental resilience, and the relentless drive required to conquer the grueling sea time, climb the hawsepipe, and master the world's open oceans? That's the ultimate question for anyone considering this incredibly unique, highly demanding, and financially rewarding life at sea. It's a career that will test every fiber of your being, but for those who endure, the ocean offers a life unlike any other. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.